sort of 25%, 30% of CIOs now come from a business background. Technology goes hand in hand with business process. In my first probably 10 to 12 years of my career, I was not good at that. Melbourne Airport 24/7 does not stop 1 minute of the year. It is always on. So you need energy, go-getter attitude, and you need to be organised. And looking at big planes every day is pretty exciting. So I don't know what it is, but we all like to watch big planes. It's a little bit terrifying at the time, but also exciting. We're in careers for around 40 years, roughly, maybe longer, maybe a little bit less, but it's a long time. That time, that duration, allows a lot of things to play out.
Kerr Forbes, a seasoned C-suite business executive and program director with over 2 decades of industry experience spanning the UK, Australia, and Asia. Kerr started life as a civil and structural engineer before a series of career transitions led him to his most recent role as CIO at Johns Lyng. Kerr has worked for organisations such as WS Atkins, McConnell Dow, and Asia Pacific Airports, more commonly known as Melbourne Airport. A doer, builder, and curious mind, Kerr has a strong sense of adventure and competitive instinct to make things happen. Alrighty, so Kerr, thank you for joining me today. You've probably had one of the most unconventional paths to CIO, starting out life as a civil and structural engineer.
Yeah.
And probably of all of our guests, you've probably had the most unusual route, I'm going to say. But I'm curious, growing up in London, what did Kerr Forbes dream of being as a child?
I dreamt of being a professional football player or soccer player, as we would say in this country. Being from England is, such a dominant part of our lives, and I played it as a kid. I was pretty good. I did get spotted, but never got a permanent professional contract. So once I knew that dream was gone, I then started to think about a real job, and that's when I started to think about engineering. I like the idea of engineering because I like the idea of traveling with it around the world. So that adventure component that you can get with doing great engineering projects around the world, and building some cool stuff. So I was really interested in things like bridges and skyscrapers and tunnels.
You sound like the stereotype boy. It was football, bridges, buildings.
Basically Lego on steroids is probably. I thought, okay, that sounds good, and I was always interested in maths and sciences at school, and they lend themselves well to engineering, and so that's what I started to think about as my plan B.
You must have been pretty academic though as a kid, because I spotted that you went to UCL, University College London, for those of you from this side of the world. But that's a top 4 uni in the UK and top 25 globally. I don't know if you knew that or not, but that's pretty impressive. So what again, there must have been something else that maybe inspired or behind that kind of to go after that path into engineering as well. I liked the idea of UCL. I think it was top 10 engineering around the world at the time as well. Really interesting place. Lots of historic announcements have been made there. I was lecturing in Darwin's lecture theatre, where he announced to the world Darwinian theory, and being surrounded by the campus where the first steam locomotive was shown to the world was in the forecourt of UCL, which really sang to me. So that's why I wanted to go there. Hard to get into. That's right.
I think I like the challenge of academia. I like to test myself in terms of my problem solving and how far I could go. I guess I'm quite competitive, so I always wanted to sort of try and be near the top of the class as well, and that helped during my high school, which gave me the grades to get into UCL. So that's I think that competitive drive in me helped spur me on, and then luckily enough I got a spot there.
Yeah, fantastic. And then after uni, your first job was with WS Atkins, who are a great organisation and a company with a great reputation. How did you land that job?
Carrying on the theme, I went to uni and it was it was really hard. I thought I was going to nail it, but the step up was immense. And I really had to knuckle down, and I got good grades. Managed to get a 2-1 with full honours, and that allowed me then to start to look at good established, mature engineering houses like Atkins, and being quite close to my home. I was in London, and the head office for Atkins is in Surrey, so it was nice to start there. But the first day was a real eye-opener. I realised that my first morning I was absolutely out of my depth, because what I'd learnt, in terms of theory and all those things that you learn at university, I was in a workplace now, and they asked me to do some design by lunchtime, and it would have taken me, by first principles, days, and they wanted it by lunchtime, and I felt like, oh my goodness, I am going to have to learn quick. It's a real steep learning curve, how to be productive in the workplace.
Was it that kind of traditional grad role where you moved around different departments and sort of saw different bits and pieces? Yeah,
it was. So you did your bit in structures, in civils, in water, and got a real taste for it. That sort of like 6 month, almost internship at each place, and then you try and find out which discipline of engineering you like the most, and they'll try and match you there if they could, and that's where I got placed with the structural engineering department, and I liked that because to me it's the most challenging in terms of understanding how buildings and structures work, and going back to my dreams of building good stuff, interesting stuff like bridges. Well, that's you've got to get into the structural discipline to do that.
Yeah, that's fair. So if you coming into the workplace, particularly from university, it's a culture shock. If you could go back now in a time machine to your first day at Atkins, what advice would you kind of give to yourself around that time?
Yeah, to ease into it, I would have gone and done some time, if I could, with a company in my third year.
Yeah.
And if I know there are courses that do have placements as well as part of it. I really encourage those. Gives you a real taste of what it's like in the real world and prepares you better for it. I didn't have that. I smashed out my degree in 3 years probably because I'm competitive again. I just wanted to get it done and get into the workforce as quick as possible. What it meant was I got in quickly, but my first few months were really challenging. So if I was going to do the same course exactly again, no placement, if I could have done a few evenings a week with an engineering company, that would have prepared me better.
Yeah, okay. Then after a couple of years, you left Atkins and moved out here to Australia. So what motivated that move?
Yes, my look for love. And I hear a lot of these stories in Australia. A lot of people from around the world have come here through love, and that's no different for me. So my wife is from Melbourne, and she was over in London for a 2-year working holiday, and I met her early in that 2 years, and we decided to come back together, and we were only supposed to come for a couple of years, and 20 years later, 3 kids, and dropped anchor. Here I am.
Yeah, I'm told that Australians are homing pigeons. That's part of the immigration strategy.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, bring back the talent. Yeah.
So how did Australia meet your expectations?
Yeah, it really did. I mean, I was homesick for probably the first 18 months, and that really sort of time was the healer there. I recognised early on that there was so much opportunity here. Yeah. More so, I think, than in the UK. Yeah. And that was exciting. Mm-hmm. So that really sort of got my eye early on. Yeah. But that was being countered by sort of homesickness. And if I had people come out and visit, dropping them off at the airport was really challenging and tough for a year and a half, 2 years. And then then I got better at dealing with that. Yeah. And once I got past that, then I started to really say, right, well, if I'm going to raise a family, I think it's a great place to raise a family. The opportunities for my career, I think, are better. Let's just give it another year and another year and another year, and to the point where I got to probably after 5 years going, right, well, this is home. Yeah. Yeah, great. And after when you came out here, you joined, is it Cardno, Grogan, Richards? Yeah. It's a mouthful. And then you moved to McConnell Dow. Yeah. And I noticed from your profile there that was a role covering Australia, Singapore and Malaysia. Yeah. Yeah. So how did you adapt to working with different cultures? Yeah, I think it's naturally I've got people leadership at the core of my values. So I think I'm able to communicate well with all levels and different cultures. And my marriage, I'm married into a different culture. So my wife has an Egyptian background, for example.
Okay.
And I find it interesting to meet different people backgrounds. So I go into conversations and relationships with a really positive, open mind, which allows me to form good relationships quickly, I think.
Yeah.
And then it just allows me to apply my transferable skills, project management as an example, to get stuff done and do it well at forming good relationships. So I think that's how I managed to sort of step between industries, step between different countries.
Did particularly working in Asia and Singapore and Malaysia, did you get any kind of formal mentoring or advice, or did you kind of learn through kind of trial and error?
I think by the time I got to Asia, I was late 20s, and because the opportunities in Australia can be quite fast, sometimes like I felt I was sort of thrown in the deep end a bit and managed to swim. It's a little bit terrifying at the time, but also exciting. So and I think that's really important to, as I look back on my career, in pretty much all my scenarios, that there are emotions which are positive and emotions which are negative, right? And I've carried both with me. And so when I went to Malaysia, I was married at the time. My wife stayed in Melbourne, and I was there for a year, coming back every couple of months. And I was literally in an apartment by myself the first night, going, "Wow, okay, this feels really lonely. How am I going to get through 12 months?" But you do, because the work I was there to do was super interesting, and so you get that counter. And then after a bit of time, you sort of get through the tough times and enjoy it.
Yeah, great. I also noticed then in 2010 you joined Australia Pacific Airports.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say you had a pretty meteoric rise through that business. And your initial role was, I would probably describe, is in your comfort zone, as in it was in infrastructure project management.
Yeah.
But then I noticed that you started to move into sort of broader roles in general management and business transformation. And I guess I was interested in what do you think that the people in that business saw in you to give you those opportunities?
Yeah, I think to get into operations, I was there at Melbourne Airport for about a year and a half, managing a portfolio of infrastructure work. And after a year and a half, it was tapped to see if I would move into operational management, which was a career change. And I jumped at it. I think they liked my sort of go-getter attitude and my organisational skills. When you're running an operation, Melbourne Airport 24/7 does not stop 1 minute of the year. It is always on. So you need energy, go-getter attitude, and you need to be organised. And I think also because I was then leading a white-collar and a blue-collar team, I think they saw my interpersonal skills and my communication skills and my relationship building skills as something that would be of real use in that role. So that's, I think, how I got the tap. I jumped at it because I look back on I think you're right. I've had a really varied career, and it's because I like variety and I like to try different things. So I jumped at it. And looking at big planes every day is pretty exciting. So I don't know what it is, but we all like to watch big planes. So it had a bit of pizzazz about it, and that got me into my initial operations management role, which then sort of grew into looking after the terminals as well.
And was there any kind of proactive sense of putting yourself in the shop window? Did you sort of let people know that you were interested in progression and ambitious?
I think in my first probably 10 to 12 years of my career, I was not good at that, actually. I wasn't good at self-promoting or marketing. My career progression came from actually me just delivering. And I guess actions do speak louder than words. And so I was lucky that other people around me saw that. I wasn't really saying it, but they saw it. And through me achieving and delivering, I got sort of asked, would you apply for this role? Would you apply for this role? Or if I was in between roles and I went to a recruitment company, they went, mate, we've got some great roles for you, and would you consider this? So I relied on others, actually.
Yeah.
I've got a little bit better at promoting and networking, see the real value and importance in it nowadays, but it's something I've had to learn.
Yeah, okay. And I'm sure I read somewhere that in that time with Australia Pacific Airports and Melbourne Airport, you were part of their kind of succession plan, their tech, their talent. I can't think what the right word is now. Or the terminology that they use. Was that a formalised program that they enrolled you in, and what mentoring did you get through that? Yeah,
it was. Luckily, being at a big organisation like APAC or Melbourne Airport, they had really good, robust talent succession plans in place. It was documented. And your leader would help you in opening doors when opportunities arose, and that very clear understanding. This doesn't always guarantee something, but if it puts you in a good position if opportunities arise. And so that was really great to work for an employer that had good structure in place around talent.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously you kind of started off and built your reputation as a civil engineer. You're then leading a major digital transformation. How was that received by the people that you were leading? What did they think you had the credibility, given your background in civil engineering?
Yeah, I think, look, I've been cemented in Melbourne Airport for a long time, a good number of years. I had some roles that got me really across the whole business, managing the operation, for example. And that gave me a good grasp on the business in terms of what its capability was on the day and where we wanted to take it. And I think that's probably what got me into the business transformation space. COVID obviously accelerated a lot of business improvement programs within businesses, and also digital improvement programs. And that opened the door for me to then step into that type of role. I've been in the business a long time. I'd had some good senior roles. I was across the business and I had a good pulse on it. So I could understand where we were now and where we wanted to take it. And I think that's really what got me in. And that was great because it got me into the technology space, which I love and find very interesting. And we're fully in the digital era now, so its relevance is so important to helping businesses be as good as they can be, which has also caught my eye at Melbourne Airport.
Yeah, fantastic. And you left Melbourne Airport after 8 years and 4 promotions. How did you know it was time to move on?
So I, COVID was wearing off. We had a new dawn, if you like, for the aviation industry. We also had a big major restructure within the airport itself, a new CEO who was coming in, setting up things. And there was a lot of change happening, a lot of flux. And the opportunity came up for me to actually, 12 years, try something different. And I thought it was the right time. Market was bounced back. It was good personally for me to start looking for new opportunities as well. And that's why I decided to move then. Funny enough, I actually started to get a bit of a 10-year itch, but that 10-year itch happened right near the start of COVID. Two reasons why I didn't act on the itch was, one, I was given this great opportunity to move into business improvement and digital enhancement, but two, the market wasn't great. So I stayed longer. And then once the market had bounced back, it was time to move.
Yeah, fantastic. And at that point, did you kind of make a conscious decision that the path to take now is into tech? Did you consider maybe going back to your kind of engineering roots at that point?
Look, for me, I really wanted to carry on this journey around technology. I felt that if I went back into, say, an aviation role, an engineering role, then that would kind of pigeonhole me in those zones or sectors, and I was conscious of that. And also, coming off the back of my recent business transformation work and technology work within Melbourne Airport, if I stepped away from it then, it might have been harder to get back into it later on.
Yeah, that's true.
I was also developing a real passion for it as well.
Yeah.
So my vibe was, stick with this, and that's why I was lucky enough to get a CIO role with Johns Lyng Group.
Yeah, and I noticed that when you joined Johns Lyng, I'd probably describe it as your first traditional tech role as CIO, which is quite a way to start.
Yeah.
What do you think set you apart for that role?
Yeah, look, two things. Being in the construction industry early in my career, Johns Lyng Group primarily is a construction business. So I understood the business, I understood the type of work they do, the business processes, all those things. So I understood the business, and that was a good attribute for me on that. But also the business knew that it had really good growth in recent years, had done some acquisitions, needed to have a consolidated strategy and plan going forwards for its digital technology, and newly created a CIO role, saw me as, I guess, someone with strategic nous to be able to pull that together and present them their overarching global digital strategy.
Yeah, right, that's great. So that's interesting. So you've still kind of got the core understanding of what they do as a business to make money.
Yeah.
Right, and how they commercially operate, yet you've also managed to get this technology, digital understanding, so that kind of hybrid of being able to bring the two together, rather than just being a pure technologist that's kind of come up from a different path. And as you mentioned, it's a global role. I think I've read there you had a team there in Australia, New Zealand, and the US.
Yeah.
How did you find that kind of managing a team kind of globally?
Yeah, the time zone challenge is real, but it can also be your friend as well. So if you're a global operation and you've got capability in different time zones, you can have really nice coordinated handovers throughout the 24-hour cycle, and just have a more consistent capability globally. So that takes a bit of time to set up and establish, but it is a challenge at the start.
You could find yourself working all hours, no doubt.
There are some some late meetings.
Yeah. And what have you learned about technology since you've moved into that role?
So for me, technology goes hand in hand with business process, and you can't look at just technology in isolation. Businesses have processes that make them a success on a day-to-day. Some of the process is in system, some of it's out of system. And you really need to understand the end-to-end to really have a full grasp of how your business operates. Where's the good? Where's the bad? Where do you want to take it to? So for me, I look at technology with business process together. And that might be because I've come from a business background rather than the sort of technologist, on the tools on the way up perspective. So I look at both together firstly. I think if you look at technology now, there is so much technology in terms of systems and applications that are available. It is much more easier now to be more off the shelf and adopt the global practice in terms of inbuilt processes. So I think that's a growing trend and sensible. If you're going down the SaaS product route, enjoy the releases and the R&D that goes into those products with the releases that come out each year. And if you sort of try close to out of the box, then each time a release comes out, you're not going to hurt your business or risk breaking something that will hurt the business. So I think that's another really interesting trend and easier for us in the tech industry to follow now as well. And the other thing is it's just changing all the time. So I think that's a problem and an opportunity. How to stay up with the pace of change of technology, so that you don't fall behind the competition, but you're also not too far advanced for the type of organisation you are. Some organisations want to be leading edge. Some are happy to be in the pack. So making sure you know which organisation you are and then keep up with that pace. So it's understanding kind of where tech fits within, let's say, the strategic priorities of the board. Is that what you're saying? Okay. So for someone that was coming from let's say a non-traditional technology background into it,
What kind of barriers do you think that they would face?
Look, I think, and I'm experiencing this even now, so I have to do a bit of promotion around this, because I don't have a technical, 20-year technical background. That may, my profile suffers a bit from that. Although, look, sort of 25%, 30% of CIOs now come from a business background, and that's which I find interesting. I think that's industry recognising that people with, say, good communication or strategic skills can come into a CIO role and make sure they've got the other technical capabilities in the team where they have gaps like I do.
Yeah.
And that can be a successful approach as well. So that is changing a bit, but I am non-traditional, and that I think perceptions, the market perceives me in a certain way because of that, and that's a blocker.
Yeah.
So I need to be good at telling my story and why it's not a blocker.
Yeah. Okay. On the flip side, what advantages do you think someone who doesn't come from a tech background has moving into that kind of role?
Yeah, I think it's the fresh ideas. For me, I bring in that cultural people leadership aspect. I think a lot of technology teams benefit from that. Some have that really well. Some struggle with that.
Yeah.
The ones that struggle, they'll be the ones with high turnover, and the quality of the outcomes won't be as good as the technology teams that are just joined together, supporting each other, enjoying the ride, having fun.
Yeah.
That's what I can bring, because
Yes.
I've done that with blue collar, white collar, workforces in the past. So I think it's that, those fresh ideas that you can bring and that new flavour.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So thinking sort of more broadly about your career rather than sort of in specific roles, now you've found yourself in technology. If you could roll the clock back, would you have done a technology course back at UCL rather than engineering?
I think, let's go for Nirvana. I think I would go for an engineering degree with a technology, bolt-on or even a double degree of some sort.
Yeah.
Because I still have, I'm passionate about both, and I'm passionate about industries like aviation as well, and so I think I would try and combine the both if I could.
Yeah, okay. And when you think about your career, are there any kind of career regrets that you've got?
I wouldn't say so, no. I feel quite fortunate, actually. I think I've had good variety, which is something I chase. I've learned something out of every career move that I've made, and I've managed to travel, which is one of my boyhood dreams. So I feel pretty good. Don't think I'd change anything. I'd take the positives out of all of it, I think.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned there learning. When I think about learning, I think about feedback. Is there any sort of significant feedback you've had in your career that you think's really helped shape you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've been lucky enough to participate in things like 360 reviews, being part of management and leadership. You get introduced to those types of things. And I find them, for me, it was really eye-opening, particularly the ones where you have to perceive yourself and then you have your peers around you give their perception of you as well and see if there's a match. And in some areas, I actually had a bit of a blind spot. People were perceiving me differently to how I perceived myself in some areas. And that at the time, when you find out those things, it really hurts. Like you think, oh, geez, how have I been so wrong about myself? And is this really how I'm perceived? But it's great to know it, because then you're aware of it. You can change the parts that you want to change. If you don't want to change some parts, you don't have to. It's just about who you want to be. So I think that type of advice has been really good and eye-opening. And I've also had some good feedback from mentors along the way as well. They've helped me, whether it's in my personal life or in my career.
Yeah. Is there been a particular mentor that stood out for you?
Yeah, there's a couple actually. Peter Watson is still to this day somebody that I have a really good relationship with. He was a great mentor and coach for me. Wasn't actually in the organisations that I worked. It was an outside of career and work relationship. But he's achieved a lot in his career. He sits on boards now. He's been, a managing director of a company. He's been a CEO. He's had senior roles, and he's been there and done it. And that was really good for me because I got into sort of leadership roles quite early in my career, and I was, managing people who were a lot older than me, and I really that was quite a struggle. So having somebody that can guide me through that was really good, really helpful, and made me feel like I wasn't on my own through that. So he was fantastic. He was also really good in terms of my personal life too, and managing your personal life with career. And making me see what really matters, and what really matters at the end of the day is your family. And that's something I learned from Peter. And as long as your family is well and in a good spot, and you're okay with that, you can perform well in your career and your other aspects of your life. And so making that known to myself was extremely helpful. Another great mentor of mine was Lyle Stranby, who was a past CEO at Melbourne Airport and APAC, and just the stuff I learned from him from a corporate leadership perspective, a real statesman and had style and class. That was, really great to see that, witness it, and take mentoring from him as well on all things corporate leadership.
Yeah, fantastic. And if you were kind of giving your own advice, as they've given you advice kind of that's helped shape you, if you were giving advice to the next generation, what kind of sage advice would you offer?
Yeah, so I guess an easy phrase is don't sweat the small stuff. Stuff that was really big to me and I really stressed about, say 15 years ago. I look back now and see it as sort of small in the whole scheme of things. We're in careers for around 40 years, roughly, maybe longer, maybe a little bit less, but it's a long time. That time, that duration, allows a lot of things to play out. So early in my career, I was really sort of maybe chasing things and a little bit upset if I didn't get an opportunity that I went for, or I felt maybe I wasn't advancing as fast as I should be. It really doesn't matter. And I'm sort of halfway through my career now, and I look at the next half of my career completely differently, like I was looking at the first half 20 years ago. Really don't need to sweat the small stuff. It's really about doing, I think, interesting work that resonates with you and makes you motivated and energized. I think if you can base your decision making on that, if I could base my decision making on that when I was maybe sort of in my early 20s, I think I would have worried less.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's interesting there you talk about the next half of your career, because I know you've recently left John Ling's group. What does that kind of dream job look like for you next?
Look, I really want to help grow a business. It's something I haven't had the opportunity to do. I've always worked for established businesses in the past, and I like the idea of growing a business. So learning that commerciality, whether I'm in a tech leadership role or a business leadership role or a business improvement role, growing a business will be, I think, a great ride, good roller coaster ride, and give me new experience in sort of being a business owner almost, that commercial side of things, and getting experience in that.
Yeah, great. Okay. I'm going to go completely off topic now for my final question. I'm always interested in kind of hearing or learning about what people read, or where they kind of get different inspiration or learnings from. What would you recommend for someone to have a read?
Yeah, okay. All right, I'm going to have to go back in time a bit here, because since having kids 12 years ago, I my time and energy to open a book now, I probably fall asleep after the first paragraph at night. But earlier in my adult life, I read a book called Papillon, which was really interesting, full of travel, adventure, based on a true story.
Travel and adventure sounds like your journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So maybe there's something subconscious there in
link.
while you're enjoying that. But
yeah.
Look, thanks for sharing your story today, Kerr.
Welcome.
It's been really interesting as well, and very different. You know, everyone else we met has probably started in much more of a pure technology role and kind of followed that journey and that path. And I think it's quite inspirational to hear someone that's come from that world of engineering and made the transition and been very successful through that. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Tales from Tech Titans, and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to get more insights about tech careers, then check out the Emmbr, that's Emmbr LinkedIn page for the latest updates, articles, and engaging discussions.